So you've carved out time to study and you're putting in real hours. You've got the prep books, the flashcards, the online dashboard with 100 blinking metrics. You've even stopped pretending that watching Suits counts as studying. And sure, it's not all pain. Some sections are clicking. You hit a 162 last week and treated yourself to an overpriced oat milk latte because you earned it. But then, the next test was a 159, then 160, then 161, then 160 again. You're not bombing, but you're definitely plateauing. Here's the problem. Effort without insight keeps you stuck in the same loop. Think about it like this. You could spend 10 hours practicing the piano, but if you're hitting the wrong keys, you're just reinforcing mistakes with every note. The sound gets louder, but not better. That's what most people are doing on the LSAT. They're working hard, but they're not working smart. And the most common place it breaks down is the review. Most people treat LSAT review like brushing crumbs off the table. A quick glance at the answer key, a sigh of, oh yeah, I see it now, and then on to the next section. But real review is not passive, it's forensic. You've got to dissect your thinking like it's a crime scene. And when we work with students, the moment things start to change is when they stop asking, what's the right answer? And they start asking, why did I fall for the wrong one? Because that shift from answer chasing to thinking dissection is where the breakthroughs happen. And let's be honest, the LSAT is designed to make smart people feel dumb. It's not testing your intelligence, it's testing your precision under pressure. So if you're making the same kinds of mistakes over and over, it doesn't mean you're not trying hard enough, it just means your review process is too shallow to uncover the pattern. And if you don't see the pattern, you can't break it. So here's the brutal truth. You could spend the next 30 days taking a full timed section every single day, or you could spend the next 10 days reviewing 5 questions properly every day. And that second approach is going to get you farther every single time, because volume without learning is just noise. But one insight is leverage, and that's what turns a 160 into a 170. In other words, you're not stuck because you're not working, you're stuck because you're not reviewing like it matters. So let's talk about what actually goes wrong in most people's review process. Because it's not that you're lazy, you're not. It's not that you're not smart, you're taking the LSAT, come on. It's that your review habits are either too soft, too vague, or just completely missing the point. From what I've seen, both in my own LSAT prep and in coaching thousands of students, review usually falls into one or more of these traps. The first big mistake is that you don't do it consistently. And we've all done it. You finish a timed section, glance at the score, groan at the 14 wrong answers, and think, that was rough. Anyway, let's jump into the next one and hope it goes better. That is not review. That is denial. What you're really doing is skipping the part where the learning happens, because practice without review is just roulette. If you don't consistently analyze your mistakes, you're giving the LSAT a blank check to keep tripping you up in the exact same ways, again and again, like Groundhog Day, but with more conditional logic. The second big mistake is that you review too vaguely. So let's say you do take the time to look at what you got wrong. That's great. But what does that actually sound like? You might say to yourself, I need to slow down, or I misread the conclusion, or I knew the answer, I just changed it last minute. These are not insights. These are emotional band-aids. They make you feel better, but they don't really teach you anything. Real review is specific. It's surgical. It's uncomfortable because it requires admitting you didn't just misread. The author used a subtle causal assumption you completely missed, and you had no mental trigger for spotting it. That's the kind of detail that lets you build a rule you can actually reuse. The third big mistake is that you don't walk away with anything actionable. If your takeaway was, be more careful next time, don't fall for traps, or stay focused, these are lovely sentiments, but they're also completely useless. You need testable, repeatable rules, something you can do on the next question, something you can write down, check against and say, yep, I applied that here. Here's what that sounds like. Quote, on flaw questions, if the author jumps from correlation to causation, check for alternative explanations before picking a strengthened answer. Or, quote, if an answer choice introduces a new comparison point, ask, did the author actually compare these two things, or is this a trap? Now that is something you can use. The big idea here is simple. If you're not extracting insight from your review, you're wasting the mistake. And every mistake has value if you know how to mine it. Now here is one of the most common LSAT myths. If I just do enough questions, my score will eventually go up. That is the same logic as saying, if I just keep going on first dates, one of them has to work out. Maybe, but if you're bringing the same awkward jokes and talking about your ex every time, the results aren't going to change. Same deal on the LSAT. Yes, practice matters, but repetition without reflection is just rehearsal for mediocrity. More questions does not mean more growth. Let's say you do a 25-question logical reasoning section. You get number 17 wrong. So you sigh, check the answer key, maybe flip through an explanation video on double speed. Then you move on to the next section. You know what that is? That is playing whack-a-mole with your weaknesses. You're hoping that somehow things will just click next time. But here's the truth. If you don't stop to understand the why behind your mistake, that mistake is going to come back wearing a slightly different outfit next week, and you're going to fall for it again. Doing more questions only works if each question teaches you something. Now, you should also know that even the right answer can be dangerous, and this one surprises people. But just because you got a question right doesn't mean you understood it. Sometimes you guessed, sometimes you got lucky, and sometimes your reasoning was trash, but you happened to land on the right letter. That's a problem, because every time you get a question right for the wrong reason, you reinforce a bad habit. And the LSAT is incredibly good at exploiting weak habits. One student we worked with kept saying, but I got it right. Why should I review it? Then they hit a plateau for 6 weeks. When we went back and dissected the questions they got right but weren't confident on, we found all kinds of logic gaps, false assumptions, and coin flip guesses. Once they started reviewing those shaky corrects, boom, the plateau broke, their confidence skyrocketed because they actually understood their success. So here's your new rule. If you weren't totally confident in your answer, review it like you got it wrong, because luck is not a strategy. Now let me give you an example of what real progress actually looks like. Let's say you do 5 logical reasoning questions. You missed 2. You guessed on 1. You weren't sure on the 4th, but somehow got it right, and only 1 felt truly solid. So you review all 5. For each one, you ID what the question was really testing, you spot exactly where your reasoning went off track, you write down a rule that would have helped, and you commit to applying that rule on the next section. Now, you're not just checking answers, you're learning patterns, you're building awareness. And that's the difference between doing questions and training for a 170. So let's be clear. More questions can help if you're using them to spot patterns and fix gaps. But if you're racing through them, hoping volume is going to carry you to victory, you're just practicing mistakes at scale, and the LSAT will not be impressed. So let's say you just missed a question, you stare at the screen, groan a little, and then say something like, I read it too fast, or I need to pay more attention, or I overthought it. These all sound reasonable, but they're also totally useless, because vague review is fake review. You're not doing yourself any favors by giving soft, generic excuses that could apply to literally any mistake. That is not how professionals review. And that's how people stay stuck in the 150s. Imagine a football coach watching game footage and saying, yeah, we just didn't want it enough. That's not a strategy, that is an inspirational poster. But you need to be precise, because if you can't name the mistake, you can't fix it. Real review sounds different. Let's say you got a flaw question wrong. Vague review would be saying, I misunderstood the argument. Specific review would be saying, I thought the author was assuming A causes B, but they were actually saying A and B just tend to occur together. I invented a causal relationship that wasn't there. Now we're getting somewhere. From that, you can extract a real rule. When 2 events are correlated in the stimulus, double check whether the conclusion actually claims causation or just points out a pattern. That's actionable, and that's something you can use on the very next question. You also need to ask yourself the same questions a good coach or mentor would ask. What exactly did I misunderstand? Where did my reasoning go off the rails? What assumption did I make that wasn't supported? Did I misread the conclusion, the evidence, the gap? When we work with students, one of the first things we do is break them out of the habit of soft reviewing. We make them get specific, even if it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable, because discomfort is where growth lives. Your new mindset should be that every mistake is a diagnosis waiting to happen. Every wrong answer is a chance to uncover a pattern in your thinking. For example, are you rushing through strengthening questions? Do you keep misinterpreting quantifiers like most and some? Do you let extreme language sneak past you on principal questions? These are all solvable if you slow down and name the issue. The goal is not to feel better, the goal is to get better. So stop settling for blurry explanations. Zoom in, get sharp, say exactly what went wrong and why, then fix it. Now, every question you miss should give you a new actionable insight in the form of a rule, and your rule should solve the exact mistake you made in the context of the task at hand. So if you missed a necessary assumption question and your takeaway was read more carefully, that's like saying eat fewer carbs after burning your toast. It's not wrong, it's just completely unhelpful for this situation. So here's a better example. Quote, on necessary assumption questions, eliminate any answer choice that introduces new information not already in the argument, unless that new info is the glue holding the logic together. That rule is specific. It's about this kind of question, this kind of reasoning, and this kind of trap. That's what makes it valuable. Now, let's say you keep falling for wrong answers that recycle language from the passage. A bad version would say, watch out for traps. A better version would say, if an answer just copies exact phrasing from the stimulus, slow down. Ask, does this answer actually do what the question's asking, or is it just repeating words I've already seen? Now you've got a mental speed bump, a red flag to look for, something that'll interrupt the autopilot. That's what real improvement looks like. And when we work with students, we actually have them write down these personal rules. They build up a whole document, a custom LSAT field manual that's specific to their blind spots. It's like training with your own greatest hits of failure. Weirdly motivational, but it works. Now, you don't need to overcomplicate these rules. Just ask yourself, what specific thinking error did I make, and what can I do differently next time to avoid it? If you can answer that clearly and write down the result, you're golden. If not, you haven't finished your review yet. Now, here's how to start building your LSAT playbook. Just open a Google Doc and call it Things I Never Want to Miss Again. And every time you mess up, bad logic, overlooked assumption, trick wording, whatever, write down a one-sentence rule. It doesn't have to be elegant, it just has to work. Over time, this becomes your personalized LSAT operating system. You're going to walk into the test with a brain full of tested, refined, battle-hardened rules. And that's when your score starts moving. Not because you guessed better, not because you got lucky, but because you built a system that makes better decisions automatically. And that's how real progress happens. Now let's get tactical about how to actually break down a question you miss. Now I know that you're annoyed, maybe a little confused, maybe on your third espresso. This is the moment where most people either spiral or shrug. But this is also the moment where real gains are made if you know what to do. So here is a simple, step-by-step process to review a missed question properly. No gimmicks, no acronyms, just 6 steps that work. Step 1, clarify the goal. What was this question actually asking you to do? Strengthen, weaken, find an assumption, ID a flaw, or make an inference. If your answer is, I don't know, just pick the best one, slow down and back up. You cannot solve what you do not understand. Every LSAT question type has a specific task hidden inside. If you misunderstood that task even a little, you were aiming at the wrong target from the start. So first, slow down and clarify. What is the job I was supposed to do here? That alone fixes more mistakes than you'd think. Step 2, pinpoint the crucial info. Don't reread the entire stimulus and hope something jumps out. That's like looking at a Where's Waldo page and trying to feel your way to him. Instead, ask, what sentence matters most? What's the conclusion? What's the key comparison? And what's the big assumption being made? You want to zoom in on the 1 or 2 lines that the correct answer is anchored to. Think of it like pulling out the foundation of the argument. If you can't find the load-bearing sentence, you're just reading furniture. Step 3, make a forecast. Before you look at the choices, pause and ask, if I had to make up a correct answer myself, what might it say? It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to focus your attention. Even something simple like, it would probably eliminate an alternative explanation, or it would show that the correlation isn't random, that would help. Now here's why this works. Without a forecast, you are reacting to the choices. And that's when the LSAT tricks you because all 5 answers are designed to sound plausible. And that's the trap. Your forecast acts like a filter. It helps you ignore the shiny wrong answers and zoom in on the one that actually does the job. Step 4, justify the right answer. You pick or you see the correct answer. That's great. But now you've got to prove it. Don't just nod along and go, yeah, that makes sense. That's not review. That's pretending you were right all along. Instead, ask, why is this right? What's the evidence? Where in the stimulus is this supported? Good reasoning sounds like, quote, this answer strengthens the argument by ruling out a competing explanation. Or, quote, this fills a gap between the evidence and conclusion by showing that the assumption must be true. You are not allowed to move on until you can defend that answer like it's on trial. Now, step 5, dismantle the wrong ones. And this is where most people skip and where most people lose points. You've got to go back and analyze each wrong answer. Ask yourself, what kind of trap is this? Why did it seem tempting? And what exactly makes it wrong? For example, this answer talks about a term mentioned in the passage, but it doesn't actually impact the conclusion. It's a red herring. Or another example might be, this sounds like it strengthens the argument, but it's based on a new assumption not supported by the stimulus. If you can't clearly explain why an answer is wrong, it means you don't fully understand the question yet. This part takes time, but it's time well spent. Now for step 6, this is the best part of all. We are building the fix. We are building the solution. We are asking, what can I do differently next time around to avoid this exact mistake? And this is where your new rule comes from. Let's say you fell for an answer that had familiar wording, but didn't do the logical job. Your new rule might be, when an answer feels familiar, pause. Ask whether it actually solves the problem or just repeats a term I saw in the passage. Boom, that's a rule. One that prevents future mistakes. One that makes you sharper. Write it down, add it to your playbook, and use it again and again. Now, even the questions you get right are worth reviewing as well. And this is the part most people skip, but it's also the reason they stay stuck. Let's say you just did 25 logical reasoning questions. You got 18 of them right, and you feel pretty good about yourself. You figure, no need to review the ones I got right. I got them right. Big mistake. Here's what I tell students all the time. A correct answer doesn't always mean correct reasoning. There's right, and then there's right for the wrong reason. The LSAT doesn't care about your answer key during prep. It cares whether your reasoning is repeatable and durable under pressure. If your thought process was shaky, if you were unsure, second-guessing, or influenced by irrelevant details, you're vulnerable. The test will find that weakness and poke it again harder. When we work with students, we teach them to flag every question where they felt unsure, rushed, conflicted between 2 choices, or surprised they got it right. These are the almost wrongs, the ones you survived but didn't understand. And these are gold mines for improvement because they show you where your instincts need tuning. For example, let's say you got a parallel flaw question right, but only because A looked obviously ridiculous and B and D made your brain hurt. So you picked C and hoped for the best. That's not confidence, though, that's roulette. And you can't afford roulette on test day. So you've got to ask yourself, would I get this right again under time pressure? That's the real question. If you took this section again with the timer on and a little test day adrenaline coursing through your veins, would you still get it right? If the answer is I'm not sure, then you haven't earned that point yet. So review it, break it down. Ask, what was the question type? What logic did you use? Why was your correct choice better than the others? Would you make the same choice again for the right reason? If not, treat it like a mistake. Extract the rule, write it down, and move forward stronger. And there's another reason to review right answers. They teach you what worked, and that matters a lot. When your reasoning is good, you want to reinforce it, cement it, burn it into your brain so it becomes automatic. You want to say, when I focused on the conclusion first, it helped me avoid the trap language in choice B. I'm going to do that every time now. And that's not just luck, that's a strategy being born. Don't let that insight pass you by just because you happen to get the question right. Bottom line, every question has something to teach you. Right, wrong, or lucky, you should leave every question smarter than when you started it, because a right answer without clarity is just a time bomb. It feels good now, but it can blow up later when it matters most. So stop treating correct answers like trophies and start treating them like opportunities, because the goal isn't just to get questions right, it's to understand why, so you can keep getting them right when it counts.